Hello again from my front porch. I am here in Austin, Texas, where I've been for the last couple of days at the Construction Industry Institute, a part of a work group that I'm with, where we're talking about craft worker training. I'm out here on the campus of the University of Texas at Austin, which is where CII is based. I'm here among the trees and the cicadas and a little bit of traffic over there and an occasional airplane that flies over. There's a concept, though, a term that was referenced, and it really stuck with me because I think maybe it's my new motto. And so I thought, you know what, we're gonna do a front porch episode about this, and I'm gonna do it right here while it's fresh in my mind. And once I tell you what it is, you'll understand why I had to do it while it was fresh in my mind. It's this concept called switch tracking. Now, it's a fairly newer concept. It came out of a book. What was the book? Thank you for the feedback, or I appreciate the something about feedback. I'll look at the actual title, put it on the screen with the author's names. But the concept of switch tracking is it's a fancy term, but I always call it going down a rabbit trail or something like that. It's where you have one topic, and then all of a sudden the discussion gets derailed with a different topic, or derailed again, or multiple times derailed. And but the concept of switch tracking is not just that you went a different direction. It's maybe what the motivation behind the direction is, because I'm prone to telling stories and getting off, distracting myself, talking about a different story than what I was talking about. Or what sometimes happens is I'm in conversation with somebody else and they're telling a story and they say something that triggers me to be like, oh yes, I know what you're talking about. And so then I share my story, and then we'll go back and forth. And sometimes both of us wind up going in different directions than where we started. And some of that is just random conversations, not necessarily in this capacity. But switch tracking itself, it generally is because, whether intentional or not, that is important to understand. It's not just strategic. Sometimes it's an internal gut instinct that makes you do this. Switch tracking means that there is a reason for you to change the course. Sometimes it's awkwardness, it's discomfort. Sometimes it's because the tone, the mood has gotten really harsh, has gotten really, really angry, and you want to diffuse that by redirecting everyone's attention in a different direction. I've done that. I've definitely done that. But that's an example of switch tracking, where, like with a railroad, you're traveling down the rail and somebody flips the switch, switches the track that you're on. It's an intentional adjustment. Sometimes it's because something is being discussed and it shouldn't be discussed. And so to prevent it from continuing down the wrong track, suddenly you switch track to something else. It can also simply be because, like I was just saying a moment ago, somebody says something and it causes you to go, oh, that gives me an idea. And rather than waiting your turn, rather than being polite and letting the other person finish, yours is so important, or you are so worried you're going to forget about it, that you have to jump in and you have to insert your story in there. Now, I have a real problem with that. I always have. In fact, I think I mentioned before, the consistent feedback that my parents always got on my report cards when I was a kid was, Paul talks too much in class. And that really hasn't changed. And I try to be more conscious about it, try to be more sensitive about it. But I mean, even in fairly recent time here, I've gotten feedback that I jump into it. Now, let me just put a pin here in our conversation about switch tracking and talk about that phenomena for a moment, because sometimes when you do that, the other person can get the impression that you're not listening to what they're saying, that you don't care about what they're saying, or that you just feel like your stuff is so much more important that you're okay with overriding what they do. And those are all legitimate things. Hi, Mr. Airplane. Those are all legitimate things that can happen. I can only say, in my case, that is rarely ever my motivation. My motivation just is, oh, you said something, and it reminded me of something, and I want to connect with you. I want us to bond over this topic, and so I'm all excited, and I have to say it before I forget about it, or before your discussion, your conversation point continues on down the road, and then it'll be too late for me to double back and talk about this. And so that's generally my motivation. I won't say 100% of the time, because I'm sure I'm guilty of very inappropriate timing, interjecting stuff. And so to anybody I've done that to, I do sincerely apologize. Not intending to offend anyone, not intending to imply like I'm more important or that my view, but just excited to share what seemed like it fit. So there is that. I don't know that even qualifies as switch tracking, though, because again, my intent is not to derail or alter the course of the other person's story or whatever it is they're trying to. I'm just trying to add in something to let them know I've connected with what they've said. Now, the unfortunate thing is sometimes when I do that, I can derail them and they forget what they were saying and the story gets lost. So that in a roundabout way, it becomes unintentional switch tracking, I guess. But I wasn't seeking to switch the track on them. It just happened. So again, my apologies. But back to the switch tracking itself. Again, it's an intentional thing, or again, it's not necessarily always conscious, intentional. It can be subconscious, unconscious, not unconscious, you'd be asleep. Subconscious, intentional, because there's something about what is happening in the dialogue that causes you to just instinctively want to change the course of what is being done or what is being said. And this came up in the conversation, because the work group that I'm working with here, it's all about trying to address the training needs of skilled craft workforce in construction, which is a big deal, especially for companies like the one I work for that is predominantly open shop. That means it's not a lot of it that works with union labor. We do have some aspects of our company that do work with union labor, and that's not a bad thing. It's just not how the company is structured in large parts of where we do our business. The issue is, if you have a union shop, if you're associated with unions, you need X number of workers that know such and such stuff. You call the union hall and you say, I need X number of workers to know this stuff. And the union has been responsible for training those individuals. And so theoretically, they send you the people, and those people have the skill sets you need because they've been prepared. Now, you still may need to tweak them a bit based off what your company specifically does, but the core content, the core knowledge, they should come in the door with to you. Okay, sorry about that. We had a really low flying plane that made a lot of noise. So as I was saying, if you have an open shop environment like what most of Baker is like, that means that you do try to hire good, competent, intelligent people, but many times they come in the door and they don't have the experience to do the jobs that you're actually hiring them to do, which means somebody's got to train them to do that work. And a lot of times that happens not very efficiently. It oftentimes gets left up to the leadership of the actual job site to just figure out how to train it. Now, they get trained. We don't put people out there that don't know what they're doing. We do not risk people's lives. That is not what we're in the business of doing. But it does create an extra layer of hassle for the leadership of that job, because you can't just hire somebody and then put them to work. You got to get them up to speed. You got to train them, and that creates obstacles. And so that's why this topic is a big deal, because it's not just Baker that has that issue. Across the whole construction industry, this is an ever increasing issue to have to deal with. Even in situations where the company is 100% union, there is still the issue of, we bring somebody in and they know a lot of stuff, but they may not know all of those things. And how are we effectively and efficiently getting them up to speed? So that's what we're here doing, this group of individuals from all across construction and manufacturing industries. Really sharp group. I enjoyed working with them the last couple of days, and I am not somebody who believes that for something, obviously different companies are competitors, you're trying to get different business, but for a topic like this, there's no reason to be competitive, because whatever we can do as an industry that helps improve the situation for the craft worker, also improves the situation for the people leading the craft workers, which improves the situation for the people leading the company, which improves the situation for those of us who get a paycheck from the company, and it improves the situation for the customers for whom we are building the stuff. So everybody wins. This literally is an example of, a rising tide lifts all boats kind of situation. So I love that we were able to do this collaborative environment here with individuals who otherwise might normally be a competition. But we're able to push all that aside and work together to come up with some thoughts on this. Now, this was just our first gathering, and so it was a lot of brainstorming, and that meant there was some switch tracking that took place, because one of the things is you get a room full of people together who are passionate about these kind of topics, and we all walk in the room with specific things we're passionate about. And so every so often, the people who are running the conversation, they would have to kind of do time out, and they would have to refocus our group to what our scope was for this work group. That we're not trying to tackle the entire world of craft training. There were some specific things that we're supposed to be addressing. And so they would make us be sure that we stayed on that path, or at least got back closer to that path when we would meander off in different directions. But that was an example of switch tracking, and it was strategic because the intent was, while whatever might be being talked about isn't a bad topic on its own, might even be a necessary topic on its own, but it didn't fit with why we were gathered together, and so it was necessary to redirect that, to switch the track, in this case back to the main track, because the person had gone off on a side rail. But when this was discussed, somebody made the observation that they were very effectively managing in that, and the term switch tracking came up, was mentioned, and I thought, I wasn't even aware there was an official name other than rabbit trails for this kind of thing. And then as we talked about it, and as I Googled it a bit, looked it up, I realized it's not rabbit trails. Rabbit trails is when I meander off, when something pops in the head and I go a different direction. But in this case, the conversation was redirecting it so that there was a purpose, so we stayed on track. I need a lot more switch tracking in my life, I think. And you, as a viewer of the Front Porch, you're well aware of how much I need switch tracking. Anyway, I just had to share it again before I forgot, and let that just out of my head. So thank you, CII, for the opportunity to be part of this work group here. And we're going to be, this is just our first meeting. We're going to be, this project is a year-long project. We're going to be meeting together again at different times, and we're going to be working through stuff, gathering some case studies, mapping out some different aspects of things. We're not developing actual training curriculum. We're actually going to be creating, I'll call it a set of recommendations, observations as to what has been done successfully, what has been implemented and vetted, so that it actually is demonstrated to have worked in the real world, and be able to say, here's what's been done and why it's effective, what the impact of these things has been positively. And again, if we across the industry can benefit from that kind of information, everybody wins. So with that, I'm going to not really switch tracking, because I would normally end at this point. So it doesn't even work. Darn, I was going to try to squeeze one in there. Anyway, so now I'm switch tracking. I was starting to meander off, and I pulled myself back. That was switch tracking. Good job, Paul. And so with that, I'm going to let y'all go, and I'll see you next time. Well, from the great state of Texas, but I'll see you next time from my front porch.